All right, Battletech enthusiasts, we are exploring the Vulcan in this podcast, in this vlog. A very, very interesting mech. And I feel like the first question when we're approaching this mech, it's anti-infantry, anti-light vehicle. And it does it very, very well from that angle, from that capacity on there. So the question is, based on what it can do for the battle value, can I get anti-infantry, anti-light mech for less battle value and have it be more effective on that? Because this mech is so specialized, is so geared up for that. It's not for engaging one-on-one mechs, or it's not engaging mechs of a similar tonnage. It's going to get shredded pretty fast. And if we try to utilize it in that capacity, the range wants us to be super, super close because we have the weapons loadout of the autocannon, 2, the medium laser, the machine gun, and the flamer. We're looking at stock. Obviously, there's variants here. So if we want to utilize the weapons, the full weapon capacity of it, we have to get close enough to another mech. The danger here is whatever medium lasers or whatever short-range missiles that mech has, it's going to pulp us. But we're also vulnerable to physical attacks. Going up against a vehicle, yes, we're also pulling in, so we're going to get close enough to vehicles and infantry where they're going to utilize machine guns and they're going to utilize short-range missiles and lasers. But from the vehicles, I don't have to worry about physical attacks. Infantry, possibly swarming, although I'm not as concerned as much with that simply because the speed of the mech versus the speed of infantry, even if it's jump infantry, if they're on foot, then I'm definitely not as worried. I mean, I'm always worried as a mech warrior when there's tons and tons of infantry stands around me and I'm surrounded. It's like the hornet's nest and you're sending in the Vulcan to clear it out. But I have a higher movement value and a higher movement capacity to do this, where I'll, in theory, for the most part, be able to get the jump on that infantry and just gun them down or hit them up with the flamer on there. So why would we take a mech when I can get the vehicle for less? Well, the big thing, if we're looking at mounting anti-infantry tactics on a mech, is mobility. Until this mech gets its leg blown off, you have a level of mobility that you don't have in tanks and in vehicles. And the challenge here, of course, is we looked at this in the previous podcast analyzing tanks. I want to keep my tank facing forward. I don't want to get any shots on the side. I don't want to have any shots taken on the side because it's going to start taking motive hits like crazy. I'm going to suffer enough motive hits facing head on. That's going to chew down my movement value. That's going to make it hard to maneuver. Eventually, that's probably going to immobilize my vehicle. So what we see where if I take a dedicated anti-infantry vehicle, I almost want to take them in 2s or 3s, in pairs, redundancy, right? 1 is none, 2 is 1, 3 is some. This kind of thought process on there, especially if my opponent has something like a warrior VTOL or something that can move fast, in range, autocannons and stuff, get side shots. It'll just chew that stuff up. With the Vulcan, I don't have to worry about that as much. The other challenge with approaching the Vulcan is it is a very reactionary type mech. A lot of Battletech players, myself included, almost standard regardless of the lists I'm playing, regardless of the battle value. If it's a decent battle value, 2,000 to 3,000 battle value, I am taking infantry, big stands. I am taking Karnovs. I am taking some sort of fast air insertion on there. With this, what it means is your infantry are now faster than mechs, and they can get into position quicker, faster, and dominate key features of the battlefield. So imagine we're playing on a table with some rubble, a good mix of woods, maybe some elevation on there. You're on your side of the deployment zone. I'm on my side of the deployment zone. Turn 1, that Karnov moving fast, I can kind of almost be anywhere on the table, especially if it's hex map. So if I land and I get that infantry out in the center of the table, what that means, especially if they're armed with LRMs or kind of more mid to long range weapons on there, I'm now projecting out a massive infantry bubble, 2, 4, 6 stands of infantry to cross the center of the table. now means you're going to be exposed to a lot of firepower on there, and it's going to start whittling you down. So I can now control when I want to engage you, because I've literally thrown up an infantry wall. If you don't have dedicated anti-infantry support, that's going to be a problem. What this means with the Vulcan is you can be up there in 1 or 2 turns. You have something that can move ahead and engage that infantry and flush them out. Another example where I find the Vulcan really, really shines is in a city fight, in an urban type environment where you have massive amounts of infantry in buildings. The buildings are packed and close enough where you can have infantry move from building to building relatively unharmed, even if they're foot infantry. Jump infantry, completely different. The challenge here is now you have 2 options. You can either collapse the building, and that's going to cause a little bit of damage to them, but they're still going to get the effects of cover. It's still going to now open up other opportunities. That is why I like to bring multiple demolishers, where I can drop 2 or 3 buildings a turn to kind of create this open pit area so your mechs can't hide, so vehicles can't hide in the buildings, and it kind of at least wants to push the infantry back. If I don't have that option, or your infantry are all around, I can bring in a Vulcan, and with the maneuverability of it as a mech, really on key, on point, flush those units out. So at first glance, it's like, look, I'd rather take vehicles to do this. But the motive hits, the mobility, to be able to move up and down elevations, to kind of move through some potential terrain that might affect it, I don't have to worry about that at all with the Vulcan. So from that capacity, yes, it works really, really well with the range of the autocannon. Then we switch to the laser, then we switch to the machine gun, then we switch to the flamer. But outside of that, engaging mech to mech, again, unless it's a light mech, but then again, light mechs, they're really not going to want to engage. They're going to keep their distance. They're going to keep running. They're going to keep moving. You essentially have what? An autocannon, AC-2, and a medium laser on there. And if I do get close enough to use the flamer and the machine gun, which I'm going to want to do because I need all the dice I can get, especially if we can start to punch through and try to fish for critical hits. But that's going to expose me to physical attacks. That's going to expose me to the bane of the Vulcan, short-range missile packs on there, multiple medium lasers firing at short range. It's going to shred me pretty fast from that perspective. So I find the Vulcan as a very interesting, a very unique machine. It's not something I automatically take. It is something that, much like the Firestarter, I take for a very specific mission format. Now, I just want to close and say, with that, there's a lot of great ways to play Battletech. When I'm playing Battletech, we'll do a blind draw, meaning you and I have a set battle value. We agree ahead of time, all right, look, are we just doing mechs? Are we including vehicles and infantry? Are we going to include air support? Are we going to include artillery? You know, it's kind of like a checkbox of options. And we agree with that type of game. Maybe we agree on the mission. And we agree on what type of terrain to play on. And I feel like that's fair, where you would have recon of what the terrain's going to be, but I don't know what you're going to play. I don't know what you're going to bring. And I don't want to know. I want to have that surprise until we actually play the game. But if I know that I'm going to be playing on a city fight, city dense map, or something where infantry would have a tremendous advantage, then I'm probably looking to bring in the Vulcan on there. If it's a map where infantry kind of go either way, I'm still always going to bring my 2, 4, 6 stands of them, but I might not need something dedicated for that. Your thoughts on utilizing this machine? I have the piece in my collection. I do enjoy playing it from time to time, but again, I find it to be a very specific role in how it plays and how it definitely operates.